You know when there's a natural disaster in the United States, like a hurricane with flooding everywhere, and then the week after, suddenly there is a flood of people and they are all drywall hanging experts?
Oh yeah. Right now there is a lot of Americans moving to France, and the relocation company business is looking very attractive to both existing businesses and people who are like, maybe I'll get in the game.
It's a little all over the place right now for sure, you know, from straight up scammers to very legit relocation companies who are charging exorbitant amounts because they just don't have much competition in front of the American market.
Yeah.
And they're taking advantage of this to some degree. You know, there's just the unknowns and all the anxieties that Americans may have about moving to France.
I mean, when you think about the British have been moving to France for literally centuries, and many of them grew up coming to France regularly. That's not usually the case for most Americans. I think that everything feels a little more like a black box, which is, you know, it's a situation that is ripe for fear-mongering and selling people things that they don't know if they really need, but they feel like they're buying a sense of security by purchasing those early on. Yeah, totally. So Back at Bound, if you've been watching our channel for very long especially, you know we stand for the idea that you, dear viewer, are a competent, resourceful, capable person, and this channel is about giving you information, not necessarily to do everything yourself, but to make good situations for your own personal decision, including whether or not to hire help for your move.
Absolutely. I mean, we pay for help here around the yard and the house, and not because we can't do those things, but because we want to take something off of our plates.
Oh Lord, yes.
There's a lot of plates up in the air sometimes.
I'm so happy when I see them show up.
Yeah. You know, and the people who help us, we're really happy to support them. They do a fantastic job.
Yep.
We love it when they show up. We really enjoy working with them, and they charge a very fair market price, although it did take us a good little while to figure out what that fair market price is here in France.
Yeah.
And that's what we want for you. You know, if you decide to hire help with your move to France, we want you to have an idea of things to look for, things to avoid, what's worth paying for, and what your other options could be if you don't want to hire someone.
Right. We actually only offer a couple of services and stay booked regularly. We want more legitimate, helpful, reasonably priced services, and we want to help you find them. And that's part of what this video is about. So let's start first with bummer of the thing, but there are just like straight up scammers out there. So if I was in the US and I was like a little nervous about a company and like how legit is this, my go-to would be the Better Business Bureau. As far as I know, there isn't really an equivalent here in France, although French viewers, if you know what I'm talking about, the Better Business Bureau in US, and there is something equivalent, please let us know. You guys are a wealth of information. But there is a way, at least, to see if someone has a legitimately registered business in France.
Yeah, we're showing a website here that's pulling all the public information available on French businesses. The magic word here is SIRET, S-I-R-E-T. A SIRET number is just the business registration number. Any business that's registered in France will have a SIRET number.
You can see here on this website, at the bottom, they have their SIRET number clearly, publicly showing.
So on these searches, you can search by SIRET number, business name, or even owner name if it's an individually owned business. And this site will bring you up information on when the business was created, whether or not it is still an actively operating business,
right,
the number of employees they have, the address that the business is registered under, the types of services that the businesses said they were performing.
This can be a big one because sometimes what someone is telling you that they're offering is completely different than what they've told France they're doing.
Yeah, and you can see the other businesses that are owned by this same entity or this same owner.
Yeah.
These are all pieces of information that can kind of fill in the picture for you and let you know more about this business.
Right.
There are also some red flags, I guess, that you can see on these sites as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, the business may be inactive.
Right. We Googled actually French handholder. Handholder is a really frequently used British term for someone who might help a foreigner with administration tasks and things like that. So we just Googled that. The very first website that came up, first one Google came back with, we clicked on it, decent looking website, we grabbed the SIRET number, we put it in, and lo and behold, it's inactive.
It's inactive.
Yeah, even though everywhere on this person's LinkedIn profile, on their website, it appears that they're an active business, it looks like you could still look her up for services.
Still book.
Yeah. So that one piece of data alone wasn't enough, but it triggered me to start to like dig in a little bit more.
Yeah. There's other information on these sites too. You can see that they have inactive TVA, an inactive SIRIT number. They may have legal judgments against them, which are listed here. They may have bankruptcies or be in liquidation at the moment.
Right.
These are all red flags that may not necessarily mean you must stay away from this company, but they're worth exploring, asking about, and looking for other pieces of data to think, is something really wrong here?
Right, yeah. So just a reference point when you don't have a lot when you're shopping around from another country.
Yeah. Next, never, ever, ever send money to anyone but the notaire when you're buying a house.
Right.
When you're buying a house, the only person that should ever receive money is the notaire agency that is working with the transaction.
Even if you are buying directly from an owner, you are still, that money is still going to go into escrow with the notaire.
Yeah. So you never send it to the homeowner individually. You never send it to the real estate agents that's monitoring the transaction.
The MLBA.
Ever. Always the notaire.
Yeah.
Always check the notaire's banking instructions as well. There have been a number of frauds with people sending emails pretending to be the notaire and providing
bank details,
additional or changed notaire information. When they see that there's a transaction going on, they'll say, here's an update. We've got brand new banking information. Ignore the previous email you got.
Yeah.
So those are things to be aware of.
Yeah, just verify that. Next up, many times, so the rental market for foreigners the long-term rental market can be pretty tough. And so one thing that a lot of people will ask us to get a leg up is, well, can I just offer to pay a year of rent up front?
Feels like common sense. You're making
it's a guarantee.
An offer. Yeah. Do not do this.
Do not do this.
First, it's illegal to do this in France.
Right.
Property owners cannot ask for a year up front. They just can't do it.
So if they do, red flag.
Yeah. Another thing that you see often is people do make that year upfront payment and then they never get their place.
Right.
Whoever you sent that money to is gone and you just can't move in.
Yeah. So the way that if a landlord is expressing this concern, there's a couple different options. I have heard of kind of like third party, like a bank can hold an account that if for some reason the renter were to default, then the landlord can prove this, then they could have access to that. And also the grantor services that you'll see on our resource list, like Grant Me, this is part of what they're for. You are paying insurance for this landlord that if you stop paying rent, Grant Me is going to. And that's why they audit your financials before they agree to insure you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so scammers are out of the way.
Scammers,
We've
done.
moved past the
yes,
scammers.
Yeah.
And
I know there's more, but those are the most common.
But the overall, this relocation industry and relocation services is an unregulated industry.
Right.
Like a lot of unregulated industries, there can be problems.
Yes.
So a few things to keep in mind when you're encountering various services and service providers. Watch out for fear-mongering. People who are trying to sell you services by presenting problems. Problems, problems, problems. Everything they talk about is the problem. They blow up these problems and make them big because they're selling fear and then they're selling services to try to fix that and ameliorate those fears.
Or, even so, like just talking about how complicated things are, right? Like you'll see, Jason and I, we do offer visa support because people kept asking us for it, but also there's a video that we've made for you that you can just use to do it yourself because you can. It's possible, right? So if someone is just trumping up this idea that things are so complicated,
and there's secrets involved, and there's things that nobody knows that only they know and they can help you with. Those are all red flags. Just be aware of that as you're going into it.
Right. It's in their benefit to make things sound complicated. Yeah. So, also, another thing that this one is like, I completely understand why it feels good to do, which is to buy a big package and pay for like many things that you're going to need over your first year in France up front, way before you need them and even before you've moved.
You're solving problems before they even become problems.
Right, and that feels good. It's
does,
like,
yeah.
feels secure, it feels reassuring. Like, I completely get that. You're dealing with a million other unknowns too, that I think it just feels nice to have those boxes checked. Like, I know someone's gonna help me with this.
The mistake here is just assuming that these are really gonna be problems down the road when you get to them.
Right.
And this can be a very costly decision to do up front.
Yeah, and what we want you to know is like a lot of the things, okay, so you're gonna need, a moving company or shipping company if you wanna get your things here. And, either you're gonna need to do your visa while you're in the US or you're gonna wanna get help with that if you want help with your visa. But other than that, most of the other things, you don't have to do them when you get off the plane. Like, there's not gonna be this like pressure cooker of like, oh my God, there's so much I've got to get done administration-wise, and I'm settling in. Like, it's just not like that.
No. You've got 90 days to validate your visa. You've got time to figure out healthcare. You've got time to get a phone and a bank, and these are all things that you can figure out on the ground.
Yeah, and then if they're a problem, like that, those companies are still there. You can still call them and book their services once you're here in France. If you realize, you know what, this thing isn't going as well as I wanted it to, let me get some help with this. So, the other thing is, like, sometimes we see people purchase these services ahead of time, and then when it's actually time for the services to be rendered, sometimes the relocation company is not particularly responsive. And that can be really frustrating, because then even if you go on to solve the problem yourself, say you paid for someone to help you open a bank account, they're not being responsive and helping you get this done. You end up walking into a Credit Agricole and bada bing, bada boom, you got a bank account, it was no problem. Well, then you've already invested in help for that you may or may not get back.
Yeah.
So just think about that before you feel like pressured to spend a large sum of money addressing problems that you don't know are actually going to be problems for you yet.
Yeah. The next thing to be aware of is like bait and switch or non-transparent pricing, or the need that you must get on a call to find out what the services are, what the prices are, how this is going to work. These things usually means that the provider knows that you're going to be shocked by the price, and you're going to need to be convinced in advance to close the
deal. Yeah.
And this is a very common sales tactic. It doesn't mean that it's an awful situation, but you should be aware that in these kind of situations, you're walking into a sales call with a salesman.
Not a consult. Yeah. Okay. Next, kind of adjacent to this, is financial incentives, right? There are lots of people in these industries that receive commissions, or they have financial relationships with people that recommend them. And I don't think this is always necessarily unethical, right?
No.
Like, you're working together with other professionals that you trust, and if you are doing marketing for them and sending them business, like recognizing that, rewarding that and recognizing that, I don't necessarily think is unethical, but it should be disclosed. And actually, it's the reason Jason and I don't do that with any of the any of the professionals that we recommend, because I feel like you're paying us for a consult, and so you're paying for that product already, right? I don't want you to feel like there's a conflict of interest when we recommend someone, when you're paying for our advice.
Yeah.
So
it may still be a good product, a good service, a good partner to work with, but it definitely taints your opinion and how you recommend someone.
I think it can.
So what you can do is just ask about these things.
Yeah.
If there's a package, if there's other outside providers, just ask.
What's your financial relationship with
And if they're
these
unwilling
products?
to talk about that, that's another clue.
Yep. Yeah, I think so too. Okay, so a few things. I mean, we've kind of like talked about some of like the negative stuff.
Things to watch out for, things to not do.
Yeah, exactly.
What can you do?
What can you do? Because I think it is totally legitimate to want to have some help and support with this. Like, this stuff might not be rocket science, but you've never done it before. It's quite likely in a language that doesn't feel very familiar yet.
It takes time to figure this stuff out.
Right, exactly. So, okay, so a few things to just keep in mind to kind of empower yourself a little bit when you're hiring someone. So the first one, think about paying for services as you discover that you need them. Or take a look at some of the videos that we've made about things like driver's license exchange and signing up for healthcare, and just see, like, is this something I want to take on? And then if the answer is no, honestly, once you're here on the ground, often in local expat circles, you can find people who are local here on the ground. I know we have a girl in AMA who has a great reputation, and she charges super reasonable amounts, and you can get help with that once you're here.
Yeah.
So
just keep that in mind, that once you
Right.
get here, there are going to be more options for help and
Yes.
services and assistance, not less.
yeah, totally. So don't feel like you've missed the boat if you haven't purchased ahead all of these services before you get here.
Referrals. Look for referrals.
Yeah.
And be aware that you should really only value the referrals of people that have actually used the service and completed the entire process of whatever thing that they have bought.
Yeah, you will see recommendations sometimes in groups, and again, like maybe the relationship between that person and who they're recommending, if they have not used them personally, there may be other things involved. And
They've heard something, they've signed up for something, but they haven't actually done the thing yet.
Yeah, it's just, talk to people who've actually gone through the process.
This is a good
People
one.
said, oh.
Yeah, I think we're in the
Funny,
same
we both
spot.
were thinking at the same time.
Finding help or getting help finding a long-term rental.
This is where to pay
This
for
is a hard
help.
one. This is often probably one of the most worthwhile services that you can reach out and get assistance with and pay for.
Yeah, if you pay for one thing, if it was us, this is what I would pay
be it,
for.
yeah. You want a good established agent.
Yep.
You want somebody local.
Yeah.
Paying for, instead, the opposite is paying for housing services that might be delivered by someone that's not in the area, has no real familiarity or on-the-ground connections with the area that you want to go to.
Yeah.
That kind of service is really hard to pull off effectively.
Right. Even if someone is really great at what they do, real estate is like, it's local everywhere, but it is like hyper local in France because of the lack of an MLS. And then also for foreigners renting who don't have a French job, like relationships on the ground with landlords, oh man, that's worth a lot. If you can find a great established agent in an area.
So get yourself a short-term rental. Look for recommendations in local expat groups, or if you arrived on a short-term rental and you're looking for a longer one, from the people around you in your town.
Yeah.
To see that good agents that can help you find something.
Yeah. All right. The next thing is, we were talking about this, that like, I think sometimes also, and this happens especially with like services that get sold ahead, that sometimes there's a mismatch with expectations of what you're thinking you're buying and maybe what the person that you're buying it from is actually selling you. And sometimes this is by no malicious intent, just like if someone's going to get you a bank account, right? Maybe you're thinking a bank account at a local branch in the city or the village or the town that you're moving to, right? So that you have a local agent, which is important in France to talk to. But it might just be they're gonna send an email to connect you with the international desk at BNP Paribas, which frankly...
You can do that from your couch too. You don't need a secret, or you don't need to know someone at BNP Paribas. They've got an email.
Exactly, and we've had clients do this, set up their account from the US and then come on a reconnaissance trip and go pick their debit card up while they were here.
So other things like apartment searches or accounting services, you may have one idea of what that means to you, but the service provider may be providing something very different. So just look for the specifics. What does it mean to get accounting help? What does it really mean to get apartment search help?
Right. How many apartments are you going to be able to look at? Are you going to be able to talk to the accountant, or are you just going to fill a form out and send it off and have no kind of interaction?
And that might be what you need, and that's going to work perfectly, but it might be something very different than what you're expecting, and you don't want to find that out after you've paid. Once you're here and your tax filing is just about due. And maybe the last thing to look up too is the guarantees. A lot of people offer guarantees. That's fantastic, but try to understand, what does that guarantee actually mean? If this is a money back guarantee, what are the circumstances that you can actually receive your money back? Or is there extra qualifiers? Are there hurdles to get over? Is there another agreement that you're going to have to sign? Those are all things, if they're not fully disclosed, you can ask questions on what that means. Which
again, I think can be perfectly reasonable. But Jason and I are all about you just want to know always what you're getting into, so then you can decide, is this the right thing for me or not?
Just ask questions.
Don't be afraid. I feel like sometimes we get nervous in these it's all these new things. Okay, so I would love to tell you this whole thing could just be made very easy by hiring the right person. But the reality is, even if you do get help, there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be moments that you're like, why did I decide to do this again?
Yeah, there will be many of those. But you're going to have also moments of real triumph when you're like, holy cow, I can't believe I figured this out. I did this thing on my own. I am brilliant.
We're not joking. It does feel that way.
Sometimes there's small things, but you can still celebrate and feel brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
And our hope is that, if you can approach this process, this decision, and the services you go for or you don't select, you approach it with an openness of knowing that you can figure out a lot of things on your own. You've been figuring things out your entire life. Things that are unknown and maybe hard to decipher from afar, it just gets easier over time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes time, and you will need to get help. But it's all going to happen. You're going to get there.
It's all going to happen. You're going to develop a French kind of persistence, which will develop your character in a whole new way.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for joining us.
Oh, I nearly said bienvenue instead of a bientôt, because he always says a
I
bientôt.
know, we went backwards. A bientôt.
Thanks for watching.